All right, today we are going ghost hunting, but forget the dusty old mansions. We're diving deep into the world of medical imaging to track down the phantoms and strange apparitions that haunt our CT scans. You know what I'm talking about, right? That weird shadow, that line that just shouldn't be there? Chances are you're looking at what's called an artifact. And these aren't just harmless glitches. These are the ghosts in the machine we need to talk about, because they can have a huge impact on a patient's diagnosis. So, what exactly is a CT artifact? Well, think of it as a phantom. It's any difference between the image the scanner gives us and what's actually going on inside the patient. It's a distortion, a ghost created by the physics of the scan itself that can hide what we need to see, or even worse, make us think we see something that isn't there at all. And look, this isn't just some academic curiosity. These phantoms are a big deal. They can completely obscure critical anatomy, or they can masquerade as a disease, leading to a misdiagnosis. This often means we have to do the scan all over again, which, as you know, means more radiation for the patient. So it's time to meet the culprits. First up is a real shapeshifter, one of the most common ghosts you'll ever encounter. It's called beam hardening, and its whole story starts with the very nature of the X-ray beam we use. So here's the catch. The math behind CT reconstruction kind of has to pretend that the X-ray beam is monochromatic, that every single X-ray has the exact same energy. But that's not how it works in the real world. The reality is that the beam is polychromatic, which is just a fancy way of saying it's a mix of lower energy and higher energy X-rays all bundled together. So why is that a problem? Well, as this mixed energy beam travels through the patient, the body acts like a filter. The weaker, low-energy X-rays get absorbed pretty easily. That leaves behind mostly the stronger, high-energy ones to finish the journey. So the average energy of the beam actually increases as it passes through tissue. It literally gets harder. And this hardening effect creates a couple of very distinct illusions in our final image. The first one is called the cupping effect. Imagine you're scanning something uniform, like a head. The X-ray beams that have to travel through the very center have the longest path, right? They become the most hardened. And the scanner's algorithm misinterprets this, making the center of the object look artificially darker than the edges, creating this cupped appearance. The second illusion is even more obvious. You get these dark streaks that magically appear between two really dense things, like the thick bones in the base of the skull. The beam that has to punch through both of those bones gets so severely hardened that the scanner creates a dark, phantom line connecting them, a line that just isn't there in reality. So how do we bust this shape-shifting ghost? Well, we have a few tricks up our sleeve. On the hardware side, we can use special filters to pre-harden the beam before it even enters the patient. Then we have super smart software algorithms that can correct for the effect during image reconstruction. And of course, there's the really advanced stuff like dual energy CT, which can basically create a perfect, virtual, single energy image, sidestepping the whole problem from the get-go. Okay, next up is a real menace, the streaky saboteur. Now, we've already seen how beam hardening can cause streaks, but it's not the only culprit. There are a few different things that can absolutely ruin an image with these nasty phantom lines. Let's start with photon starvation. This happens when the X-ray beam has to get through something incredibly dense, like a person's shoulders. So few X-ray photons actually make it all the way to the detector that the signal becomes incredibly weak and noisy. It's like trying to take a photo in a pitch-black room. The reconstruction algorithm then takes that tiny bit of noisy data and amplifies it, painting it back into the image as these huge, ugly streaks. And then you've got the classic, notorious problem: metallic implants. We're talking dental fillings, surgical clips, hip replacements, you name it. Metal is just so dense that it causes this perfect storm of extreme beam hardening and photon starvation. The result? These crazy starburst-like streaks that can completely wipe out any useful information in the area. And finally, sometimes the cause is, well, the patient. If a patient breathes, coughs, or even just fidgets during the scan, the data becomes inconsistent. The scanner gets one piece of information from one angle and a totally different piece from another. It can't reconcile this conflicting data, so it just gives up and produces streaks and blurring. So fighting back against streaks means you really have to know your enemy. For photon starvation, you can crank up the scanner's power, the MA and kVp, but that comes at the cost of a higher radiation dose. For metal, we've got specialized software, often called MAR, that's designed to clean up those specific artifacts. For motion, the best defense is a good offense. Scan faster. And layered on top of all that, modern reconstruction algorithms are getting way smarter about identifying and cleaning up this kind of noisy data. Our third ghost is a little different. This one isn't about the patient or the physics of the X-ray beam. Nope, this one is all about the machine itself. Let's talk about the perfect circle, or as they're officially known, ring artifacts. You see, this particular ghost is a pure hardware problem. Inside that big donut of the CT scanner, there's a ring with thousands of tiny detector elements. If just one of those detectors is faulty or even just slightly miscalibrated, it's going to give a consistently wrong reading. And as the scanner spins, that single wrong reading gets painted into the image over and over and over again, creating a perfect circle. The good news is getting rid of these rings is actually pretty straightforward. The first line of defense is just regular maintenance and calibration to keep all those thousands of detectors playing nicely together. But if a detector does go rogue, clever software can spot the odd data out and simply replace it. It basically looks at the readings from the detectors next to the bad one and averages them out, a process called interpolation. And just like that, the ring completely vanishes. And that brings us to our final phantom for today, the digital imposter. This artifact has an official name, aliasing, and it's a ghost that's born when we just don't gather enough information. Aliasing happens when the scanner doesn't sample or look at the object frequently enough to accurately capture all its fine details. Think of it like watching a spinning wagon wheel in an old movie. If the camera's frame rate isn't high enough, the wheel can look like it's spinning backward or not moving at all. The scanner's making a similar mistake, and its brain fills in the gaps with information that is just plain wrong. When the scanner tries to build an image from this incomplete, undersampled data, it creates these digital imposters. Visually, this can show up as fine streaks radiating out from sharp edges in the image. Or you can get these really bizarre, wavy, fabric-like patterns called moire patterns. So what's the fix? Well, it's pretty logical. If you're undersampling, you just have to sample more. You can do this by increasing the number of projections or views the scanner takes as it rotates. You can also zoom in on a smaller field of view, which packs more samples into a smaller area. Or, of course, you can use a more advanced scanner that just has smaller, higher resolution detectors to begin with. Okay, so let's do a super quick recap of our ghost hunting field guide. If you see cupping or dark streaks between dense bones, you're looking at beam hardening. If you see other aggressive streaks, think metal, motion, or photon starvation. See a perfect circle? That's a faulty detector. And if you see those weird wavy moire patterns, that's a dead giveaway for aliasing from undersampling. You know, our technology is getting better every single day, but this battle against the phantoms in our images, it's never really over. Every time we build a faster scanner or a higher resolution detector, we uncover new and more subtle challenges. Which kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on. As our tools get more and more powerful, will we ever truly hunt down that very last ghost in the machine?